Do our words derive from things, or do things derive from our words? You know, we normally imagine ourselves to think about things. We imagine our thought to be our private inner possession. And we imagine things to be independently existing external realities. And our language is the thing we use to somehow match up with our thoughts or somehow match up with those things, right? But the truth is, in that thinking, we're really just moving playing pieces within the way we collectively have come to articulate what this situation is. And that collective articulation is language. On its own, the world that presents itself to our experience is indeterminate. It's in our engagement with that setting that we specify, this is that. We name things and organize them. In other words, based on our concern, we pick out what's going to matter to us in this situation. In familiar settings, that's clear enough. When I go into a cafe and I'm supposed to meet my friend Betty, I look around and I don't really notice anything else except whether Betty or not is there, and that's what I end up seeing. Everything else just kind of falls into the background. If, on the other hand, I'm the restaurant owner and go into that same scene and I'm thinking about redecorating the place, I'm not going to notice Betty or anyone else. I'm going to notice the color of the paint on the walls. Right, so in those situations, you can see that our perceptual structure takes the form of a determinate figure against an indeterminate background. And the way that setting gets figured is based on our concerns. So that's true in these already established situations, but it's also true in the basic establishing of what things we're going to recognize at all. You know, we recognize hills and valleys, we recognize sunrise and sunset. Those are things that make sense from the point of view of our perspective, but they're not automatically things that would be meaningful to any other kind of organism that would encounter that situation, and they're not obviously distinctions that are internal to that world itself. You can see that again if you think about other words we use, like we talk about somebody as being cool, or somebody is used to say being a nerd, or you say that's my girlfriend, or in some contexts people say that's a holy space or that's a cursed space. Those are really meaningful things people work with, but they're naming distinctions again that come out of our concerns, not automatically meanings that come out of the nature of things. And so with a word like girlfriend, for example, you call someone your girlfriend, there are reasons for it, but once you put that name on the person, suddenly there's a whole set of expectations and values that come down on your relationship. And the two of you start acting out of the fact that you've now defined things in that way. And it didn't have to be that way. And so that word starts to dictate who you're going to be. So with that example, you can help to see how words are actually interpretive and formative of the way we see things, rather than just reflective of facts as they already are. And that doesn't mean that our words are unmotivated, but it means that they're meanings. It means they articulate how the world speaks to our concerns. And so in our thinking, in our talking, whatever we're doing, when we operate with notions like girlfriend, hill, thing, we're operating with pre-established pieces that have been worked out in our society as the way we need to get around. So when we say those things, in addition to accomplishing whatever we want to accomplish within the way those things are already defined, we're also sending a message to everybody else we deal with that we confirm them in their point of view. So words end up being playing pieces in the way a whole social system, a whole human system perpetuates itself and reaffirms itself, rather than being arbitrary markers that we've made to attach to privately held thoughts or independently existing things. Think about a child growing up. When a child's growing up, it's learning the language, and it's in learning the language that it learns how to make sense of this weird, wild place it's in. So learning those words is simultaneously the experience of its world becoming articulate and manageable, and through then being able to handle that world with those words, it becomes able to interact with these people it needs to interact with. For the child, that is presumably a radically transformative experience, where the world first comes to have meaningful form, clear form. But once the child gets that speech, well, it can move the playing pieces, right? Suddenly it's able to interact with its parents, to get the things it wants in relationship to the world, etc., etc. So language has shifted from this function of kind of carving out for the child what's possible within the world to now becoming a means for navigating in that world. And that's the distinction Merleau-Ponty then makes between what he calls first order or speaking speech and second order or spoken speech. Well, that thing that happens with the child is presumably what has happened with human beings throughout history, right? Human society has had to bring into being its ways of articulating for itself where we are, who we are, what this place is, what it's about. Once that world has been articulated, though, it just seems obvious. And that's why when we think about the world using that already spoken speech, we don't notice the rule of language. We think we're just engaging with our own private thoughts on independently existing things. Right? So the very nature of language is that it conceals its own working and makes itself seem like it's secondary and inessential. It's in the ongoing practices of artistic expression that illusion is shattered. It's artistic works that really show us we can still see things differently, and they open up new ways for us to see ourselves and our world.